Hey, heathens! The deconversion story of TJ Guitar. Growing up, we went to church every weekend. Unfortunately, as a wee little tyke, my family was already exposed to the negative aspects of religion. We lived right next to an EV-free church. My family had gone to a Lutheran church in another city earlier in the morning. But my dad would be out front doing work in the garden, and the people who attended this EV-free church told my dad that he was bad because he didn't go to church, despite the fact that we had already went to church elsewhere. As I grew up and was old enough to move on from Sunday school to actual church, my parents were singing in the choir, and thus my sister and I had to sit alone in the pews. I didn't mind church. The songs could be fun, and there were free donuts. I did, however, zone out, as I'm sure most children do, during the sermons or biblical readings. At some point, I started not wanting to go to church and just pretending to be sleeping whenever my parents would come see if I was ready. Eventually, I felt guilty and decided to give church another shot, so I did. Around the same time, I started being involved with youth group, which consists of some of the most hypocritical people you will ever come across. These people act friendly and compassionate at church activities, but at school they could be completely different people who pretended that they didn't know you, and this was not enough to turn me away, though. I would overhear some of these people at school talk about drugs, having sex, and the like. These same people who act all goody-goody at church, I know the type, this pissed me off to no end. I didn't want to be around these people. For whatever reason, I decided that God wasn't the problem, but that these fake Christians were. Sounds familiar. That sounds very familiar. Okay. I didn't think much about God, but I still believed that He existed. It wasn't until college that I really began to start questioning my religious thoughts. I had been attending a private university, which of course was affiliated with a religion. My roommate was a pastor's son, but he was not the problem. It was the fundies. How could these people not only believe this bullshit, but shape their lives by it? This is going to sound familiar. It already does. This is going to sound familiar, but during the time I was taking topics in world philosophy, where we had to read some Buddhist texts, and as well as a field trip to a Buddhist temple. I found it fascinating. There was even a point where I wanted to be a Buddhist. During my crisis, my parents had come up to take me out to lunch, and inevitably the subject came up. I asked my parents, "Why do you still believe?" They couldn't give me an answer. They still didn't see a reason not to believe, and it is what's familiar to them. I sent him many links to websites of various denominations, and the fact that even Christians can't even agree on what is truth. I was still a believer, though. I had the thought that even though nobody agrees, somebody still could be right. We basically came to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what you believe in as long as you don't force it on others. And I still agree with that to some degree. The next Christmas, I went to church with my family. I didn't have a problem with it. You can sometimes get stuff out of the message, and I feel the holidays should be spent with the family, not sitting alone at home. The pastor's message was utterly ludicrous, to the point that even my father could not believe what he was hearing. This was a Presbyterian church, and the pastor said, I kid you not, "It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or a Hindu. All you have to do is accept Jesus into your heart, and you will go to heaven." Ponder that one. I started frequenting internet forums and seeing discussions go down. I could not believe the nonsense that I was reading. Christians can do whatever they want without consequence as long as they ask for forgiveness afterwards. Satan planted the evidence to make us think that the earth is more than 6,000 years old. How could people believe these things? Are they that stupid, or are they just blindly listening to something someone had told them? My parents still go to church on occasion, and I'm not out to convince people to change their beliefs. The first reason for that is when I try, I sound like a jackass and I don't enjoy it. The second reason is that there's really no point because many people are set in their ways and it's like talking to a wall. Then I decided I was going to be a pantheist. Because I'd rather believe in some of the cool Norse gods than the Judeo-Christian one who smites people and destroys cities. I didn't want that God. I had started having discussions with my cousin who warned me, stop looking for answers. There are none out there. You will end up believing in nothing, which is dangerous. Quite the opposite, actually. I had become utterly obsessed with theology that I would spend all of my free time and more researching the net and trying to find answers. And I received my first collegiate D. That is not even the worst part. I felt guilty. Guilty that I had rejected this God, that I was going to be damned to hell for eternity. Just because I believed in the wrong thing. I refused to believe in a God who would damn all the Buddhists and Hindus and whatever's just because they believed in the wrong thing. I thought, what was wrong with me? Why can't I believe anymore? I moved home. I finished up my general education at community college, and am now transferring to another public university to finish up my degree. For the past year, I have not given religion one iota of thought. Is that an agnostic? Is that an atheist? I say, who gives a shit? Do labels really matter? I didn't have a belief in theism. Can't talk all of a sudden. Theism. I don't have a whole lot of interest in science or philosophy, so I really don't give a shit. Now I try to take things day to day, live for the moment, while still having some obvious long-term goals, such as graduating and getting my degree, saving money, etc., etc. And you know what? Ever since my deconversion, I've been a hell of a lot happier. I have a lot more confidence in myself, and I'm even a tad bit more outgoing. A few years ago, one of my Hindu friends said something that I think is right on the money. All religions boil down to is faith. There is no way to prove religion, and if there was, it wouldn't be religion, it would be science. Well, there you have it. As to, what would you call that, TJ? I'd say, I'm not exactly sure I would call it atheist. Agnostic is probably the best, and it's not your generic form of agnostic where you say, well, we just don't know. You're actually truly up in the air between it with sound, but I don't want to put words into your mouth. It definitely sounds like you're leaning away from the God hypothesis, and your who gives a shit idea reminds me of the apathetic atheist. You don't give a shit if there's a God or not. So I think that's probably the best way to describe you. Hope you enjoyed the story. Almost at 300.